Hey there everybody, and welcome back to another episode of City Skylines. As always, my name is Nulo. I have a nice fresh cup of coffee here to get me going for this episode. So now today we're working on two parts of sort of one area, and the first of which is going to be sort of like a high-end residential sort of waterside development, and then the second part is going to be more of a commercial, markety sort of well done up establishment on the other side of this residential area. So that's what we're going to be working on today. As you can see here, we're just sort of getting the layout done up here, and I thought this would be a really nice place for a more upper class sort of suburban area, because we've got the sort of resort sort of hotel area that we've done a few episodes ago just next to it. It's near the city, it's quite close to the stadium, so it's in a very good sort of touristy spot. So it would be somewhere that you would expect sort of more of the higher end citizens to live, where they're sort of close to everything, and they're close to sort of the higher end shops and supermarkets. Which is why on the other side of this sort of canal, we will have that sort of high-end shopping centre to sort of accommodate for the people that live here as well. As these people also have access to sort of like docks and sort of for their own private sort of boats and stuff like that they can access, and they're very close to sort of the highway and all sort of main roads, so you can get around fairly easily without any troubles as well. So this is definitely got a very pedestrian focused. We have these nice walkways that go right round the sort of waterside area of the residential area. That provides sort of pretty quick access for the citizens and sort of tenants of these particular areas. Nice and quick access to their sort of garage, their sort of docks, and then if they want to sort of go for a walk anywhere, they can do that quite easily without the need for sort of car or vehicular transport as well. So we're getting started on the docks here, just trying to make a nice design that we can sort of replicate over and over again. So putting a lot of effort into this first one, and then we can just sort of duplicate that and sort of basically spread them around evenly throughout this area. So I'm using a mixture of different props and sort of being able to like put it together. Using these nice sort of wooden sort of walls / fences, which I thought were a nice touch to this sort of dock area, just rather than sort of having your traditional sort of like steel like railings. I thought I'd put a bit more design into how these looked and just sort of make it fit with the area, so it's sort of more of an upper class area. So we have a bit of a nicer looking entrance to everyone's docks and things like that as well. So then we're using this nice little dock asset that I got here, and just sort of being able to sort of try and place it in the right spot. And then we'll start putting in like some boats and sort of yachts and stuff like that. And now that I think about it, I think it'd be really cool to sort of do this in the future episodes, to actually start putting some ships and small boats on the actual lake, sort of spread out like this, sort of actually being used, because we've got a bunch of different areas where people like a bunch of different sort of marinas. So it makes sense to have sort of some boats that are kind of like moving around, and sort of, well, they won't be moving around because they'll just be about assets, but just having ships that are actually out on the lake to sort of give it a more like these are actually being used and people are using these ships, and they're not just sort of constantly moored at their respective piers, as well as that. So here we're getting started on the sort of walkway area and main pedestrian sort of function of this particular area. So starting off with a load of garden beds, and then sort of placing like a series of seats and planters at certain intervals so that people can sort of sit down. You're trying to make sure there's a lot of shade, because this is a very concrete area, so we'll sort of be putting plenty of trees to sort of create cover. And then what I'm using here is, which I didn't really mention whenever I first started using it, but using the procedural objects mod to take what was like a big wall and then sort of slant it on its side, and then try and sort of make this kind of like I don't know what you would call it, like a barrier from the land to the sea. I guess kind of like a sort of angled wharf. As you can see, there's still like some imperfections, but I do come along and sort of fine tune them. It's kind of hard to do straight away because with how procedural objects mods orientates, like left, right, up and down and forward, it's purely dependent on where the actual asset is facing. So when you start rotating it, it moves those axes around, so it's a little tricky to sort of fine tune it. But you do get there in the end if you sort of use the, I think it's the Alt command to sort of slow down the movement. So it's a little bit easier to sort of fine tune it, but it does take a lot of tweaking to get it right as well. Here we're just sort of adding in some hedges that sort of adds another divider between the wall. Again, just so it's not like completely concreted, you do want this to look quite nice. So I figured having this sort of divider with a like hedges in the middle would be quite nice. And then we'll obviously put in sort of a variety of different trees and bushes throughout, especially the front here, because this is kind of like like the main entrance for pedestrians versus the main entrance where you might get out from a car. So we want this to be a little bit nicer. We make a bit more of a grandiose entrance. We put sort of proper path down and sort of proper sort of I guess I'm not sure what the word is for, like I don't know, like an arc thing, like an entrance sort of thing for that one as well. Yeah, if that makes sense. And then we're putting in these boats. I had a big yacht here, but that was just way too out of place. Too big. That sort of would belong more in like a proper tourist like tourism boat tour, kind of big, like a big dock that would sort of be more around the industrial area. So I didn't use that because it was just way too out of place. Again, using these are like concrete dividers for roads, but they come quite handy for making sort of like little raised platforms. They've got a nice texture to them. They've got like a little like a trim on the outside, so it works quite well, and you can sort of merge them together too. And they're also compatible with procedural objects mods. You can actually like change their shape and make them bigger or smaller and move them around much easier than you would normally, which is really good. So they're quite a versatile asset, which I use a lot in this particular episode, and I've used it a lot in other episodes as well. So it's a very versatile asset that I like to use as well. And then here we're just coming out to sort of fine tune this area, adding in all the plants and trees and sort of seating options and lighting options and stuff like that as well. And then adding this sort of front area just to make it look a little bit nicer, as I said before. Now I wanted this to be more appeasing sort of entrance that people would walk into as well, especially because it's looking right out across the lake. So you do want it to make it look quite nice as well and quite appealing. And then putting in these nice coverings mirroring each other, which I thought was a pretty cool little thing to add there as well. But that's very close to sort of like capping that particular area off, which is sort of adding in some trees and things like that. And then basically you can see I've sort of have cut it out, but I did the same style on the other side and then added a few different buildings and stuff like that. But here we're adding in more of a kind of like apartment / sort of, I guess, hotel area. It could be either or, depending. Because this could be a touristy place, you might have something like this. But I wouldn't be sure, because if you've got a lot of private residents, you might not necessarily want a hotel nearby. So I'm sort of in the air as to what that should be. But it's some sort of residential residence either way. And so we're basically just doing up the back area of this particular build. So we add like a nice pool and then sort of like some nice sort of grass area as well. And then once this is done, we sort of move on to the more commercial part, which is across the canal to our left from this angle. So using basically using a mixture of procedural objects mod and the asphalt like decal texture that you can put other textures on top of, because the terrain dips. It's hard to sort of, you can't get a straight drop, so I'm using that to kind of mask up the gradual slope and make it look like the terrain comes all the way to the edge of the wall and then sort of drops right off, and then I can sort of start adding all these decals in and other assets like the pool as well. and also I can still add in trees because this isn't that high off the ground that trees will sort of be hidden underneath. So if I get like taller trees, the trunk is actually long enough that I can it can reach the ground but still make it look like it's growing on the level of the actual like this building is as well, which is quite good because sometimes it's tricky to place trees and shrubs that aren't like assets as opposed to like actual tree objects as well. So you'll see me sort of do that too as well. Again, playing a lot around with these sort of hedges to try to like isolate different areas and sort of segregate different parts of this backyard area as well. And then here, as I said, just adding in these trees. Wanted to give a bit of cover from the other residents across the road there, so sort of adding sort of like these sort of privacy trees to sort of just give people a little bit of privacy as they're outside as well. And also because you've got this kind of semi-public walkway that people can use to gain access sort of up to the upper side of this sort of residential area as well. And then using these stairs, really nice stairs, they work quite well, especially when you want to get angles that are cornered inside each other, like right here. You can sort of just slot it in there, which is quite nice. So rather than just having a straight staircase, you can sort of change the angle as well, which is really good. Especially when you've got these sort of pathways that kind of hit an angled area, it's quite good for that, to make it sort of sit a bit better as well, considering we're not really building by the game's rules, we're kind of mixing it up. So that's quite good to have there as well. And then I basically just used this little concrete pillar, which I think I skipped, to sort of fill in that little gap, so that people don't fall down there. And then here we're just kind of adding in some finer details of that particular build. Now here we're moving on to the sort of more commercial area. Got a little bit of commercial demand, but it's mostly office and industrial. So I do add some industrial elements, and in the next episode I'll be also doing adding a bit more in industry and office space, because we do have quite a big demand for it as well. But I also want to start getting some more suburbs in. So hopefully, if I boost up that industrial and office, we'll get more of a demand of residential, and that way I can start filling in the gaps between these different hubs, because we've got a bunch of different sort of main like town centre hubs, but not too much in between. So hopefully once I start appeasing that industrial demand, we can then start adding in the residential area and sort of filling out the city a little bit more, and then maybe even working our way out to the actual like outer suburbs, and sort of even across the lake as well, to some of the outskirts of the city. So this is the sort of first part of the luxury sort of shopping centre. And then what I did is I kind of wanted to extend the building a bit more, as well as adding some office demand. So I put this kind of office building kind of adjusted around to make it sit on the shopping centre nicely, so that made it look like it was actually part of the building. And when I add some other assets, it sort of joins that all together as well. But I think that's one of the really cool things about like having your anarchy mods and your movement mods and even the procedural object mods, that you can sort of customize buildings a little bit more, and then to kind of make your own buildings from different buildings. So you sort of combine two buildings to make your own, which is really cool, because it just offers another degree to an ever increasing amount of customizability with City Skylines. And then here I wanted to add like a car park, more like on-street car parking, and I didn't want to use the sort of roads that I don't know what they're called, but they're basically like a road specifically made for like car park lots. But this one I kind of want like side street car parking that's just on the side. So I sort of put this in here. I couldn't get rid of the arrows, so I actually go back and make it a one-way street, which gets rid of the arrows on the right side, but keeps them on the left, which is not too bad. Like I do want to get rid of all of them, but it works, and there's no sort of clipping decals or anything like that. So you'll see that come into play. You'll see those arrows disappear when I sort of play around with the arrows and get rid of those lane arrows. They eventually disappear, and then I put a nice sort of one-street car parking, which kind of worked out quite nicely as well. And then here we're making more of the waterside area. So this area is kind of going to be where, like, so your weekend market's going to go. It's going to be like a nice open space with sort of half grass, half asphalt, and then we're going to have a whole bunch of market stalls. Because I figured the big open space would be perfect for nice sort of Sunday markets or something like that, especially near the waterfront. You get a nice sort of lake breeze, so I think it'd be perfect for it as well. So it was quite fun to do as well. So what we're doing here is just setting up where our market's going to be. So we've got like a little access road here that people can access to sort of set up the tents, and then we have sort of the car blockers to just make sure the cars don't sort of go somewhere where they shouldn't be, or have an accident when they're sort of setting up the marketplace. We're just sort of moving around as well. So you can see here we're just filling out the edge of the wharf, just trying to make this nice and neat, make sure there's no sort of funny terrain glitches, and then we sort of patched up with the sort of cobblestone texture that we got there as well. Here we're just also finishing up like another sort of more commercial wharf. So here again, people might be able to like put their boats here, but it'd be sort of like renting out the space from this particular area or from the shopping centre, so they've got a place to park their boat if they don't have a waterside property. And then we're sort of sorting out like a nice little grass area, just to, again, to make sure it's not like completely concreted up, because that's not kind of what I want to do. I don't want it to have to be completely concreted like an industrial kind of wharf as well. And then here what we're doing is using basically clipping in like a bunch of different shops to sort of make this shopping centre seem more like there's actually more going on as well. But some of these shops fit in quite nicely, like the luxury boutique shop, the sort of outer square fitted very well with the existing shopping centre, so that was quite nice, and that sort of added in. Some movie signs and shop signs, so there'd probably be like a theatre or something in there as well. So some signs on what movies are currently showing. And then here we're sort of creating like a direct access to the ground level, but also the sort of shopping centre itself, so people can go straight from the main road into the shopping centre. Which makes sense because we'll probably have like a bus stop up there that like buses will come through and sort of drop people off, and then they can sort of gain access to either the shopping centre itself or down to the lower exterior area where some other shops will be as well. And then we're sort of trying to make this walkway look a little bit nicer because given the height of the walkway, it does look a little odd, a little bit of a thumb sore. So I'm trying to use these procedural objects more to create planners to kind of fill in this weird sort of gap between the ground and the walkway, so it looks a bit more believable, and then sort of adding in some nice trees, just trying to fill out this area so it creates like a kind of like a bit of a implied sort of wall to sort of segregate off these areas, and kind of also make it add some more sort of like supports to the pillars that are holding up the walkway as well. So that's kind of why we've got that to go in there as well. And then once we add all the shrubs and stuff, it sort of makes that look a lot nicer, a lot more finished off as well. Again, just adding some nice little overhead signs I thought would be quite good to make that sort of walkway a little bit more interesting. Makes sense to have sort of little advertisements as people sort of drive past, going to the shopping centre or just going along that road in general as well. Now here we're sort of starting work on the sort of opposite side of this shopping centre. So this is going to be more, like I said, more office focused. So there'll be more in industrial sort of office spaces, and a few extra other like external shops that would be there in that particular area. So we're just adding in the first of our office blocks, and then sort of using this kind of interesting angles that we have going with the streets to sort of make some garden areas, add like a car park, and sort of squeeze in where I can. It's always quite fun to sort of use these funny spaces and try and sort of see what you can sort of fit in there and sort of make it all join together. The other thing is that like it stops you from leaving like big open spaces where there's nothing going on, which is always a bit of an issue with cities, is trying to fill in the spaces as best you can so there's no free areas that just have nothing in it, because realistically a city is going to try and use as much of the space as it can without leaving too much just sort of free, unless there was going to be like a construction site or some sort of planned building that was going to go in there at a later stage as well. And then this part is kind of where we've done the main bulk of the structure, and then we're sort of going in and starting to detail all of these spots, so adding in all the trees and adding in these nice little like glass overhangs just to sort of add a bit more detail to the shopping centre. I added a few of them and I think they're quite nice as well. Also just sort of adding as a bit of shelter for the entrance if there's sort of rain or something like that. And then we sort of start putting in some of the other like wharf structures and things like that, where people can sort of load up boats and stuff. Coming back to this marketplace, I think just to touch up that last little area, again adding in those decals just to kind of neaten that whole area up, because it's still looking a little messy. It's not quite done, but once I add the decals in, it looks a bit nicer. And then also copying this second wharf across just to this side, because I figured it'd be good to have another one on that side as well. And then sort of getting this area ready to sort of add some grass, or just leave it as kind of like a nice sort of gravelly dirt texture, as opposed to sort of the ruined texture or just sort of general stones and things like that as well. So we're just making the shop front, trying to make this sort of one of the main, or sort of not quite the main entrance, but like the lead up to the main entrance is around the side. So I just want to try and neaten it up, make it look quite nice, make it look quite structured as well, by adding in these sort of it was decals, but I thought it'd be better to add these sort of nice concrete slabs, because they also suit the rest of the surrounding shopping centre. So I wanted to keep it nice and consistent with that as well. And then we're sort of adding in nice little these sort of wooden angled seating things that people could sort of sit on, using the procedural objects more to kind of make it to scale and make it sort of fit in that nice sort of corner area, so it sort of suits the curve quite nicely. And then sort of adding in different walkways for different options that people want to get, and sort of adding some nice sort of separator paths and bushes, like just away from the streets, so they can sort of walk away from the cars if they want to, and just kind of act as a bit of a sort of like a sound barrier, but not quite. And then just sort of seeing some little areas that I could sort of squeeze in a nice shape that fits in quite nicely, and then adding in some more of these trees just to try and reduce the gap between the ground and that walkway, just so it looks sort of a bit nicer, a bit more compact, and sort of it fits in, and it's not just kind of this floating platform that's just up there with no real context as well. Now here we're sort of adding in these sort of external like restaurants. So we've got the main shopping centre, and I would imagine you'd have this sort of nice waterfront restaurants that get a good view of the city and the lake as well. So it was nice to sort of put that there. Trying to find a way to make like a raised sort of planter area, just again to sort of fill in that nice little gap that has been created between the sort of glass fence and the actual structure of the shopping centre, and then using some sort of pre-built procedural object mods to sort of make a little kind of wall bed that sort of is how that sort of grass is raised up like that as well. And then sort of using this area, using these natural supports to kind of create like the separation between like different restaurants. So we probably have like a multiple amount of restaurants, and then you sort of use these nice little walls and separate about, just to kind of make them different from one another, so it doesn't look like the one restaurant and looks more like two or three, depending as well. And again, using procedural object mods to make the garden beds fit, and then sort of figured it'd be nice to have this cool like raised sort of hedge along the main entrance of the shopping centre as well. And then from here on in, like, it's basically just adding in all these minor little details. We're coming very close to the end of the episode. There's obviously a little bit more that I did off camera, but I'm trying to keep these episodes a lot shorter because they were starting to sort of creep up in time, and just because like there's so many more assets and sort of so much more detail that we're sort of expected to put in, it's kind of hard to fit a lot into one episode. So hopefully you have enjoyed this episode. And the episodes will be a little bit more of a time difference in between each one, just because I'm a little bit more busy now than I am. But obviously, it's still gonna be something that I'm gonna continue on doing. But I think that's gonna be it for the rest of the episode. So I'll let this time lapse play out, and then, as always, you'll see some nice cinematics of the finished product. And until next time, see ya.